Dark clouds rolled across Ice Age skies as two kinds of humans walked the earth: Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. They were not strangers to each other. They hunted the same beasts, fought the same winters, and even shared fire in the same caves. But one truth still haunts us: only one of them survived. What really happened to the Neanderthals? Were they wiped out in brutal wars, consumed by shifting climates? Or did they simply dissolve into us, leaving behind fragments of their blood hidden inside our veins? Scientists whisper of a process so strange it blurs the line between extinction and survival, a fate called reverse speciation. It is a story filled with fossils that talk, DNA that hides secrets, and discoveries that shock even the most seasoned researchers. What you are about to hear may change how you see yourself in the mirror, because traces of Neanderthals are staring back at you every single day. But the true twist, the real reason their shadows vanished from history, that is something I'll only reveal as we move deeper into this journey. Stay with me, because the most shocking discovery is still to come. 600,000 years ago, the winds of Europe carried with them the footsteps of a new kind of being: large-brained wanderers who carved stone, hunted in coordinated packs, and eyed the wilderness with a spark of strategy in their gaze. They came from Africa, leaving behind their ancestral lands to push into colder territories where survival itself was an act of defiance. Some call them archaic humans, some early Neanderthals, some an evolutionary experiment that teetered on the edge of becoming something greater or collapsing entirely. Their bones, scattered across caves and river valleys, speak of bodies built for strength, with rib cages wide and skulls heavy, yet their fate was tied to a mystery still unsolved. What is striking is how their journey mirrors another migration. That would happen much later, when Homo sapiens left Africa to conquer the world. But unlike us, these earlier humans would fragment, adapt, and transform in ways no one fully understands. Did they give rise to Neanderthals alone, or did they share the blueprint of our own species as well? The truth may lie in tiny shards of DNA, the kind that whisper secrets buried for hundreds of thousands of years. Fossilized teeth suggest they mastered the use of fire long before we did. Their stone tools show a level of sophistication once denied them, and their survival in brutal winters proves they were anything but primitive brutes. Yet destiny had another plan, for a shadow was always on the horizon: the rise of Homo sapiens. When the two lineages eventually met, the world stood on the edge of a collision, one that would decide who would remain and who would disappear. But disappearance is not always what it seems, and here lies the twist. Neanderthals may not have vanished in the way we think. Their DNA still breathes inside us as if they never left at all. Yet how can extinction and survival happen at the same time? That paradox is the heart of this story, and the shocking explanation behind it is something I will unfold shortly. For now, know this: the closer we examine their past, the more it begins to look eerily like our own, and the more unsettling it becomes to ask who truly won in the end. 40,000 years ago, Europe was no quiet land. It was a stage where two powerful human lineages stood face to face: Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, both armed with fire, tools, and the will to endure. The Neanderthals had ruled these lands for hundreds of thousands of years, shaping flint into deadly blades, wearing hides stitched with bone needles, carving strange markings on cave walls that hint at language, ritual, maybe even dreams. They were not the silent, stooped figures once mocked in old textbooks. Their brains were slightly larger than ours, their hands skilled, their eyes sharp in the dim glow of Ice Age nights. They buried their dead with care, adorned themselves with beads and pigments, and some carried hair the color of rust, their skin pale from northern climates. But as sapiens advanced from Africa, carrying with them new weapons, larger tribes, and an uncanny ability to adapt, the balance shifted. Small bands of Neanderthals, rarely numbering more than a few dozen, were suddenly confronted by swarms of sapiens who moved in larger groups, sharing knowledge through complex speech, forming alliances that reached beyond the horizon. Yet, even in this clash of survival, something intimate occurred: interbreeding. We know it happened because their blood still runs through us, fragments of ancient unions coded deep in our genomes. And here is where the paradox grows stranger. If Neanderthals truly went extinct, why does every non-African today carry up to 3% of their DNA? If they vanished, how is it that there has never been more Neanderthal genetic material on Earth than there is right now, pulsing inside billions of sapiens? The answer hides in a concept called reverse speciation, where two distinct species merge back into one, blurring boundaries until separation itself disappears. It means extinction does not always mean erasure. It can also mean absorption. But if Neanderthals live on inside us, why did their bodies, their culture, their identity vanish so completely? Some scientists argue they were assimilated, others claim they were outcompeted, and still others whisper that disease or infertility tilted the scales. Fossils show that male hybrids often had reduced fertility, a cruel barrier that may have slowed the blending of two worlds. And yet across the map of our genome, some Neanderthal fragments gave sapiens advantages: better skin for cold climates, stronger immune systems to fight foreign pathogens. But large portions of their DNA were wiped away, erased by natural selection, as if evolution itself was purging what didn't belong. It raises a haunting thought. Were the Neanderthals truly too different from us, or were they simply unlucky? In a world that demanded relentless adaptability? This is not a simple story of conquest or disappearance. It is a labyrinth where survival and extinction weave together like threads in the same tapestry. And the deeper we search, the more the edges of this tapestry fray, revealing truths that are not just about them, but about us. Because what happened to the Neanderthals could one day be the mirror of what happens to us. Stay tuned, because the real twist of their fate has yet to be revealed, and it may not be the story you think you know. Deep within caves across Europe, scientists uncovered fragments of bone and strands of ancient DNA that rewrote everything we thought we knew about human history. The revelation was staggering. Neanderthals and sapiens diverged from a common ancestor nearly 700,000 years ago, yet their paths intertwined again and again in a dance of contact, conflict, and interbreeding. When researchers sequenced the genome of a Neanderthal woman from Croatia, they discovered something astonishing. Her DNA differed from ours by only about 0.3%. To put this in perspective, the genetic gulf between modern humans and chimpanzees yawns across 30 to 50 million differences, while Neanderthals stood only 3 million steps away from us. That is not the picture of a separate alien species. It is the picture of a sibling. And yet, despite such closeness, the two were not identical. Within the fine print of the genome, scientists identified slivers of code unique to Homo sapiens, making up barely 1.5% of our DNA. And these small but powerful sequences shaped neural development, brain plasticity, and the very functions that might have tilted destiny in our favor. The unsettling part? That razor-thin edge was all it took to alter the fate of two human worlds. One thrived, the other disappeared. But disappearance was never clean. For scattered across our genomes lie traces of Neanderthal legacy genes that still affect our immune system, our skin, our metabolism. Some of these fragments helped early humans survive in new climates, while others introduced vulnerabilities we still carry today. What's more, not all humans carry the same Neanderthal pieces. It is as if every living person holds a different shard of their ghost. This genetic mosaic blurs identity and raises a provocative question. If Neanderthals live on inside us, did they ever truly die out, or did their name vanish while their essence survived? Yet this mystery only deepens, for certain stretches of the human genome are completely devoid of Neanderthal influence, as though natural selection itself scrubbed their presence away. Why did evolution keep some parts of them and erase others? What qualities were deemed useful and what was discarded as unfit for survival? The answers are written in fragments of bone and nucleotides, waiting to be pieced together, but not all truths are comfortable. Because if evolution can purge a lineage so close to us, could the same fate one day strike us down? Stay with me, because the darkest revelations about their fall are still just ahead. They were strong, clever, and resilient, yet Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago, leaving behind only scattered bones and silent caves. Why? The answer is not singular, but a storm of forces that struck at once. Climate chaos battered them as the Ice Age swung violently between freezing winters and sudden thaws, stripping food sources and forcing endless adaptation. Their populations were never large to begin with, rarely more than a few tens of thousands spread thinly across continents, surviving in small bands of 10, maybe 15, vulnerable to isolation and genetic decline. Into this fragile world stepped Homo sapiens, arriving in Europe about 50,000 years ago, moving in larger groups of over 100, sharing stories, strategies, and innovations that could be passed rapidly from tribe to tribe. The difference in numbers alone created an imbalance, but it wasn't just about population, it was about connectivity. Sapiens formed vast social networks, while Neanderthals lived in scattered pockets, each vulnerable to extinction through chance, conflict, or famine. Competition sharpened the divide. The same herds of mammoths and reindeer that sustained Neanderthals were hunted by sapiens with more advanced weapons and coordinated strategies. Some encounters may have ended in violence, raids, and battles over resources. Others in fleeting unions that left traces of DNA but little lasting peace. Archaeological sites tell of tools and ornaments of Neanderthals adapting, even borrowing techniques from sapiens, but never at the same scale, never with the same explosive momentum. Diseases carried by newcomers may have spread like wildfire through isolated Neanderthal groups, cutting them down before they could recover. Slowly, over thousands of years, they dwindled. Some were absorbed into the larger sapiens population, their genetic legacy surviving but their identity erased. Others perished, their graves now dust beneath our feet. Unlike the dinosaurs who vanished in a sudden cataclysm, Neanderthals faded like embers in a dying fire, their glow merging with ours until only traces remained. And yet their end is not merely a story of loss, it is a warning, a mirror held up to us. For just as Neanderthals faced shifting climates, dwindling numbers, and competition from a rising power, so too could we one day stand at the edge of survival, unaware that the very traits we rely on might not be enough. And the most haunting truth? Neanderthals did not know they were disappearing. They lived their lives, raised their children, hunted, crafted, dreamed, all the while walking unknowingly toward extinction. That is a fate we too may share, unless we learn the lesson their silence is still trying to tell. Stay with me, because the final revelation of their story might be less about their past and more about our future. Since their discovery in 1856, Neanderthals have been more than fossils. They have been mirrors reflecting how we define humanity itself. At first, they were painted as brutish cave dwellers, bent and slow, caricatures of something less than us. Later, new evidence forced a revision. They were builders of shelters, makers of beads and pigments, artists who carved cryptic symbols into rock, caretakers who looked after their sick and elderly, hunters who strategized with fire and tools. Each discovery has chipped away at the myth of Neanderthal inferiority and revealed them instead as an alternate version of us, a parallel experiment in what it means to be human. They survived for hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than our own civilization has yet existed, stretching from the Mediterranean to the icy edges of Siberia. Yet despite their intelligence, their adaptability, their creativity, their line ended. Why did ours continue? Was it simply a matter of chance, the right genes at the right time? Or was there something deeper in the way sapiens communicated, cooperated, and imagined futures beyond the present hunt? Archaeologists argue over whether Neanderthals spoke in full language or something less, whether their art was symbolic thought or mere decoration, whether their social structures lacked the same expansive bonds that allowed sapiens to grow into vast networks. But here lies the cruel twist. Even if Neanderthals had all these capacities, their small scattered groups may have been too fragile to withstand waves of competition, climate, and disease. Assimilation was partial but never enough to preserve them as a distinct people. Their DNA may have been absorbed, but their voices went silent, their culture vanished, their identity dissolved. And still, their fate lingers as a haunting possibility for us. Because humans too are not immune to extinction, we are simply living at a different point in the curve. Our population may be vast, our technologies advanced, our reach extending, even toward other planets, yet we are bound by the same fragile thread of survival. If war, plague, or environmental collapse strike, the echoes of Neanderthals remind us that dominance guarantees nothing. Their story is not just history, it's prophecy. But prophecy only matters if we choose to hear it. The last question remains, will we heed the warning etched in their bones, or will we, like them, walk forward blind to the shadow of our own extinction? The answer to that is something I will reveal as we draw this story to its end. The disappearance of the Neanderthals is not a tale of failure, it is a tale of transformation, absorption, and warning. They were not conquered in a single moment, nor did they vanish overnight. Instead, their existence bled into ours, piece by piece, until their bodies were gone, but their essence lived on. Today, billions carry fragments of their DNA, silent witnesses inside our cells, reminders that extinction is rarely absolute. But what makes their fate truly unsettling is the mirror it holds up to us. For all our cities, satellites, and science, we are not so different from them, another species navigating an unpredictable planet, vulnerable to the same forces of climate change, dwindling resources, and the possibility of self-destruction. The Neanderthals did not know they were living in their final chapters, and neither, perhaps, do we. Their story whispers a truth both humbling and urgent. Survival is never guaranteed, not even for the cleverest of beings. And so their legacy is not only in our blood, but in the lesson they left behind, that strength without cooperation falters, that adaptation without foresight fails, and that even the mightiest lineage can fade if it forgets how fragile existence truly is. We carry them within us, not only in fragments of genome, but in the silent duty to endure where they could not. The question is whether we will learn from their vanishing, or whether someday, long after our voices fade, another species will sift through our bones and wonder why we too disappeared.